Hey, what is up, mortals? Tim here, and before we get into today's video, there is something I want to say. I want to let you all know that we have a merch store. Some of the items in it are only available for a limited amount of time, so if you're interested, go into the description and check it out. Each purchase helps us make more content. Secondly, if this video hits 500 likes by the end of the week, we will continue this what if. Third, if you didn't know, only 40% of you guys are subscribed to us. So please, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into the story. Most of you probably know the tale of how All Might's master, Nana Shimura, died at the hands of the dreadful All for One. But what if she didn't? As Toshinori was forcefully pulled away from the fight by Gran Torino, a thought rushed across Nana's mind. Did she really have to sacrifice herself? At first, she thought she had no choice but to send her student away and continue fighting the losing battle against All for One. It was something all previous users of One for All had done. But something drove her to keep smiling and go beyond, not just for herself, but for everyone she knew. All for One began to laugh out,
"Smiling in the face of death. I admire that."
Then, he charged his arm up with a dark energy that radiated from the rest of his body, ready to blast Nana Shimura away and end the legacy of One for All, blissfully unaware that she had already passed on One for All. When he fired, Nana used her float quirk mixed with the power of One for All to blast herself out of the way, while she charged her arm to 10,000%. Let's just say the fight continued on with blood and guts being spilled, stuff that would get this channel demonetized really quickly. A few days after that fight, on a dark and rainy evening, Kotaro, Nana's son, was taking out the trash. He hadn't seen his mother in many years, which caused him to have a deep hatred for the hero's lifestyle. With this hatred running deep inside of him, he would commonly take out his frustration on his children whenever they even slightly thought of becoming a hero. As Kotaro went to wheel out the trash bin to be collected in the morning, he froze at the sight of Nana on the other side of the road. She was wearing casual clothes and her arm was heavily bandaged. Conflicted, he stared at her with his mouth wide open. Nana just stared back, smiling. She knew it was going to be hard coming back to the family she had abandoned. But after her near-death experience with All for One, she knew she couldn't waste any more time away from them. Before either of them could speak a word, a young boy came running out of the house yelling, "Dad, the interview with—" But the kid also froze at the sight of Nana, someone he had only seen once or twice when he was much younger, but someone he had heard a million stories about. "Tenko? You've grown," Nana joked as her grandson crossed the road swiftly, getting a hug from him as soon as he stepped on the sidewalk. The name Tenko Shimura may not be familiar to some of you, as it's the real name of Tomura Shigaraki. With Nana having survived her fight with All for One comes a complex amount of changes, many of which we'll touch upon later, but for now we have to move far into the future to a teenage Tenko. Our story picks up with the 16-year-old Tenko on his way home from school. This version of the world was vastly different from the one you and I would know. For example, as he was walking, Tenko stopped to look into the window of an electronics store with massive televisions on display, each one playing a live interview with the current #1 hero, Endeavor, and his young son, Shoto. As Tenko stood there and watched, he learned the overall gist of the interview was Endeavor talking about how Shoto would someday surpass him as the #1 hero, not by birthright, but by pure hard work and dedication. An unscathed Shoto Todoroki nodded along with a smile to his dad's plan, a drastic deviation from how we would normally know him. As Tenko attempted to continue watching in awe, he was stopped by a heroic voice, calling out to him, "Young Tenko, is that you?" Suddenly, this universe's All Might came crashing down out of nowhere, landing right behind Tenko. Within seconds of the landing, All Might was swarmed by fans trying to get a picture or even an autograph. The struggles of being the #2 hero. All Might barely managed to escape from the swarm around him without harming anyone. He grabbed Tenko and jumped onto a nearby rooftop in the process. With All for One pronounced dead, even before All Might had reached his prime, this meant that All Might was a radically different hero. Other than the obvious of not having his life-threatening injury, the rest of the differences will be revealed later on. And I'm sure you may be wondering how All Might and Tenko know each other. Well, with All Might being like a surrogate son to Nana, she quickly introduced him to her family. Tenko, being a superhero fanboy to the core, accepted him almost straight away, and All Might became like an uncle to him. Though, Kotaro would be completely against it, as he saw All Might as the reason why Nana had left their family. Back with All Might and Tenko, he started off by asking Tenko how he was on this fine day. Tenko responded with a slight smile and showed All Might strange gloves that covered his thumb and index finger. His grandmother had given him the gloves. They were designed to stop any misfires of his quirk, since, were he to put all 5 fingers on something, it would decay immediately. All Might, cheery as ever, just laughed and said that was amazing for him and asked where Tenko was going. "I'm headed to Nana's place. She wanted to talk to me about something." As Tenko answered, All Might had given him a weird look, as he was headed there as well for the same reason. They just stared awkwardly at each other for a minute or two, before All Might asked if he knows what this important thing was. Tenko only shook his head. As you can probably guess, Tenko was a shy and quiet, rather anxious kid, a far cry from his Shigaraki persona. While he didn't kill most of his family in this universe, he still had fears of his quirk, due to some incidences with it, such as accidentally decaying his toothbrush. But thankfully, his grandmother had always been there to help and taught him about his quirk even though it was completely different from her own. From this training, it furthered Tenko's idolization of heroes and drove him to become a hero even more. While he does have a much better understanding of his decay quirk compared to his canon counterpart, Tenko still needed equipment to help him, as evidenced by the new gloves he had. Before we get back into the story, I want to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts of the anime presented. Now, in case you guys didn't know, we also have a third channel called Anime Theory. Anime Theory mainly focuses on a large variety of mind-boggling anime theories. If you are interested in content like that, please go check the description below or click the eye icon in the top right corner. With that out of the way, let's get back into the story. All Might and Tenko made their way over to Nana's apartment, both of them confused and uncertain about what was going on. As they arrived at the apartment, they were greeted by an old and gray Nana. Although she hadn't shrunk like most of the other old people in the MHA world, she quickly rushed them in while she sported her trademark smile. Tenko took a seat on her living room couch as Nana signaled All Might into the kitchen, leaving Tenko to sit there on his own, still confused, but very curious. While he only made out a few murmurs from the next room, Tenko clearly heard All Might sounded rather surprised. Then, as he tried to eavesdrop more on the pair, Nana and All Might came bursting out of the kitchen, Nana still with her smile, while All Might looked rather worried and nervous. As All Might took a seat across from Tenko, Nana asked him a question. "So, Tenko, how are those gloves holding up?" While not saying much, Tenko put his full hand against Nana's table and made sure all of his fingers were touching it. Then, after a few seconds of silence, the coffee table didn't disintegrate. Nana clapped while she exclaimed she knew those gloves would be perfect for him. Although Nana was being bright and cheerful as normal, Tenko could feel the uneasiness from everyone in the room, especially All Might.
"Look, Nana, are you sure about this? What if it's too much for his quirk to handle?"
All Might spouted out with concern. Tenko started looking at All Might with a curious look, and wondered what he was on about. He failed to notice Nana had stood up while pulling out a softball. Then, when she charged up her arm with the faint remnants of One for All in her body, she threw the ball at Tenko. All Might panicked, as even at her age the ball could still break through Tenko's skull. As he reached to grab the ball out of the air, Tenko caught the ball effortlessly with one hand, while he still looked at where All Might was just sitting. All Might just stood there in the middle of the living room, completely dumbfounded. While he knew Tenko personally, he didn't know him that well, so this was completely out of left field for him. "What do you think, Toshi? I'd say he could handle about 3 to 8% of One for All already," Nana boasted as she sat back down, which made the situation even more confusing for Tenko, since he'd never heard of this One for All. All Might didn't reply. He simply just sat back down and asked his own question,
"What type of hero do you want to be?"
Tenko took a minute to think of an answer. "Well, I want to be the type of hero who can save anyone, anywhere, whether it's from a villain or themselves. All Might regained his smile when he heard this, but it wasn't his full grin that he was known for. Then he stood up while he explained the legend of One for All versus All for One, and how his very own grandmother ended the vicious cycle. Though, a lot of it didn't make sense to Tenko. Some of it did. The memory of Nana coming home after a long time, with her arm being in a cast, finally made sense to him. Then All Might continued on, explaining about One for All, saying even though All for One was presumed dead, they needed to keep passing on the quirk just in case he ever came back somehow, or someone far worse arose to fill the void created in his absence. With Nana sort of forcing this onto Tenko, he took up the offer of becoming the next user of One for All, not knowing the many repercussions and problems that entailed taking on such an immense power. Unlike All Might, Tenko's body was far from the perfect vessel for the power. But unlike Izuku, his body could at least hold the power inside it right away. Nana's predictions on how much power he would be able to use was on the lower end though, as his starting percentage was only at 2 to 3%. But Tenko only learned this after using 100% a little too much at the start. But over time, he would raise his natural limit, something we won't be seeing him do, since we now have to move 3 years into the future, where we'll meet up with this universe's Izuku Midoriya. Thank you all for watching! Now, there's a few more things I need to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We the Celestials, I want to thank the writer and the editor for this video. Their details will be in the description below. If you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord that is in the description of this video and hit up the head of one of those departments. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video. So thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you like this video. Until next time, peace out, mortals. Y'all have an amazing day.
Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand.